Hey guys, it's Cameron from Mr. Robot, Season 2, Episode 11, Python Part1.P7Z. Now I apologize, I thought this was going to be the finale. I actually thought what they were going to do is that they're going to do what they did with the season premiere, where, you know, they put 2 episodes and just call that as the season premiere when it's actually the first 2 episodes, and I thought they were going to do the last 2 as 2 hours, and to my knowledge, that is exactly what they were going to do. For some reason, though, that's not what they did here. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed because I was hoping that they do a 2-hour finale, but unfortunately we only got part 1 this week. And it definitely does show, because while this was a great episode, it was probably one of the most confusing episodes of Mr. Robot we had. I'm not going to lie, most what happened this episode, I don't know what the hell it means. I'm not gonna lie, especially the main stuff going on. I really was very confused as to what was going on, and I have to say that where the show is going, this might be the first time where I don't know if I'm necessarily on board with, and that's not really a bad thing, because a lot of times I'm not really sure where the show's going, and they really surprise me. But you guys know I've defended this show so much, and I love it so much. I don't want it to go in a weird direction, but I don't really know where they're going with some of the stuff they did in this episode, and I feel like this first hour kind of did them a disservice by just running this episode. I feel like if they would have done both episodes, then it would have been a lot stronger, episode, but just this episode, it just didn't really feel like one episode. It's mainly because there was supposed to be 2. I don't know why they didn't do it that way, but let's get into this episode because you guys don't care about this. I'm rambling on already, so let's just get into it. There's a lot to talk about. Not nearly as much as usual, because like I said, a lot of this is just setting up stuff for the finale, but let's just get right into it. So, right away, Elliot's telling us something that I think we haven't heard anyone say all season. That is that Angela was right. They can't beat them, but that doesn't mean that we have to lose to them either, and maybe there's a way that they can stop them from winning. And he says Mr. Robot has a presence as a silent observer, watching him at all times. Even when he can't see him listening into his conversations, he's still one step of heaven because he is him, and maybe he's the key and always has been. And what if he can be the silent observer? So he thinks back to a time in middle school when his friend Sam, which that I thought was a very clever Sam, you know, like Sam Esmail. That's kind of what I thought they were trying to do, because, yeah, this is all Sam Esmail's creation, and if Elliot's breaking the 4th wall, and if he had a character named Sam, that kind of makes me think Sam Esmail could even end up in this show, just the way that's going, and the show's so weird and twisted, they could find a way to do that. But he told him about a way he induced lucid dreams so he can find a way to study in his sleep. All someone has to do is lie in bed and say the mantra, mind awake, body asleep, and say it many times in your head, and he says we're in this with him, so it'll work better if we do it together, and he repeats the mantra many times. Now, we don't see Elliot for the majority of this episode after that, because he is asleep and he's trying to study, and we basically see the rest of this episode as us seeing everyone else and what he's studying and things like that. So I thought that definitely was interesting to see. That was obviously a very good start, just kind of a weird direction that this goes in. Like I said, this really does not feel like one episode. It feels like a larger part of 2 episodes, which it is. It's just part 1. So Joanna holds her baby, and Jesse goes to her and asks what she wants to do. She has to see the location again. She asks if this is accurate, and he nods, and she says, all out of the gifts that Tyrell has sent, this is the greatest she's received. And we don't know what she's talking about or what's going on there, but we only see that one scene of Joanna. So again, kind of choppy stuff in this episode. Like I said, it's hard to judge it as one episode, though, but basically, most of this episode actually focuses on Angela, and if there's one thing I think this episode did very well, is it showed how similar these 2 are. Not just the situation that they're in, but, you know, mentally and, physically, obviously, they're not the same person, but mentally and methodically, they very much are the same kind of person, and I thought it was interesting the way we saw that. She's in the back of this van, and we see those 2 people who are staring at her. They're 2 nameless kidnappers who, even in this episode, remain nameless, and she asks if they're gonna tell her where they're taking her, and she says they can't do this, asks for her phone back, and they remain silent. She says she's not the only one with the files and tells them there are copies everywhere and assures them that a lot of people are going to know that she's missing, and they continue driving. As we know, she's planning on leaking these files and turning herself in, but clearly these 2 do not want her to do that. And it's interesting because I've heard that these 2 figures that we see in this episode have been in every episode so far. It's just now they're finally playing a major role. I think it's just a great example of the attention to detail that Sam Esmail has. You know, he can make a minor character walking in the background and suddenly turn him into one of the most important figures on the show, and I think he's done that very well this season especially. So Dom is in the hospital after the ambush, lets the doctors know the blood on her is not her own. By the way, we do not get any resolution to Darlene and Cisco, which that was weird. I don't really know why we didn't, but for some reason we don't. I'm sure we will next week, but the doctor says that she needs to finish her evaluation. She says she understands they have their own procedure, but they're in extreme circumstances and feels the best use for her is back at the crime scene because she already knows what to do. She has all the information she needs. She knows who the source of it all. All she needs to do is continue working, and they should be getting Comey involved. That's how serious this is, and the doctor says she's just in shock. She says that she is at him and the way he's treating her right now. So Santiago asks to speak to her one-on-one, and we get a very familiar scene. That's one of my major complaints with the episode, is that a lot of the scenes we get in this episode are very repetitive, and we've seen them before, and this is very much the same. It very much reminded me of the scene where the Dark Army attacked, and Dom basically said, I know what we're doing, we have to do this, you're wrong. Very much the same here. Basically, the only difference is that he's talking about, how the Dark Army, they need to, what Price wants to do with this $2 trillion is a good idea, and she's trying to say that they need to get the military involved, and that this is no longer just a terrorist attack, and that they could be starting World War III. And like I've said, I could really see the show going in that direction. Because of how dark things have gotten, and because the Great Depression has happened, I don't see good things happening. I just don't. I mean, this isn't like it's the last season, so I don't really see good things happening here. And, she's basically trying to say that he's on her side, and he's not walking away, but they need to find a way to start walking between the minds and not on them, and whatever happened, and whoever did this mobilize quickly, create a narrative, and before they even knew it, this was all in the rearview mirror. And he tells her to go home, get some rest. She tells him to promise her she'll be able to do the interview, and he says it can wait a few hours. So she's basically told to go out on her own and get some sleep and basically recover from all this, because obviously she's going through a lot. I mean, she was just in an attack and she needs some time to compress, and I actually really do like Dom's character. I know a lot of people haven't loved her character, but I like that she's been ahead of things. I like that she's been someone who is very work-oriented, and we are reminded in this episode that that's really the only thing she is. She's so work-oriented that she's kind of isolated herself from everyone. We'll get into that a little bit later, but Angela's in the van looking out. The kidnappers reach their destination. The female one lets her out, brings her into this house, one of which she doesn't recognize, and she's then taken, which I was trying to pay attention to the pictures just to see what they were, but there wasn't anything really of significance, so again, I don't really know what this is supposed to represent. But she's taken in through a door, brought into a room with just a computer and a fish tank that looks almost like the fake reality that Elliot craved, which I thought was really interesting. Remember that room that Ray had with, Lone Star and RT in it? This looks like that same exact room, and there's a red phone as well that kind of represents the one from Edward's store, Mr. Robot. Not Mr. Robot the persona, Mr. Robot the store, which that I thought was also very interesting. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, I have no idea what any of this means. Like, anything going on in this plot, in this episode, I had no idea what it meant. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. I feel like they're going in a direction I don't really know where they're headed, and I don't really know if I like it. But she then sees this younger version of herself at the computer who tells her that they don't have much time, need to get started. She asks who she is, and the younger version of herself says there's water coming out of the fish tank. She types something in the computer, which looks like an old 90s style computer, and she goes to this game called Land of Confusion, I think it was called, something like that. But the younger version of herself asks her if she's ever cried during sex. Angela asks what's going on and who she is, and Angela refuses to answer the question. The younger version says if she doesn't answer, she'll be punished and beaten, and she lifts up her shirt to reveal many lashes on her upper back, which that was very hard to watch, but Angela asks who's doing that to her. The young one says they need to begin, their time is running out, and asks her the question again. Angela says no, and the next question is, has she ever fantasized with murdering her father? Of course, the answer is no. And I couldn't tell if Angela was actually being sincere. She was just dodging the question. That question, I could honestly see her saying yes, because we've seen how different her and her father are right now. Would she murder him? I don't know. But again, to me, it kind of seemed like she was dodging some of them. The next question asks if she's a giraffe or a seagull. And again, just a very strange scene. Probably the only straightforward scene this episode comes next with Price and Jack. And what I loved about this scene is that remember that scene we got in last week's episode where Price admitted that he is, this mercenary, and that he's someone that wants to be the most powerful man in the room, and how if he doesn't have power, he feels incomplete. And that scene, I think, made this scene all the more powerful, because we really see the desperation in him. We see that Price feels he's the man in power, when really he's not. And he's with Jack, who says he can't roll out any eCoin loan since it's unconstitutional, and Price doesn't see really how the Constitution fits into it. You know, he feels that that doesn't really matter. He says with eCoin changed to $1, it'll free up the economy and give him some breathing space. And Jack says he knew that this was going to happen from the get-go, and he's hitting him with this while there's an energy crisis across the eastern seaboard. And Price says he's coming to him first asking. Jack says the only reason why he's there first is because he doesn't want to get slapped first with regulations. And Jack says if he is indeed asking them, then he's saying no, he can't make his own currency since that's the government's job. It just sounds absurd. It really is. And he says they cannot let him make big loans in eCoin that he wouldn't make in dollars. And Price says he's not the problem here. The problem is that hard cash is fading rapidly, and that's just the way of the world. And Bitcoin is spreading, and if Bitcoin takes over, they are all in a world of hell, and it is unregulated, and it has already reached its transaction volume maximum, and is partly controlled by Chinese miners. And Jack says he just accepted $2 trillion from them. Price says now he wants to use it against them, and with eCoin, they control the ledger and the mining servers. They are the authority, and he'll make sure he has visibility into every single wallet that is open. Again, he feels that he's the one in power here. He can't not feel that he's the one in power, and it just adds so much to the scene. Jack says the president's going to laugh in his face. Price says he will know this is the right thing to do. This is going to be controlling the good old-fashioned American company, and if he wants to regulate, then do so. He'll give him back doors, side doors, whatever he wants. Just don't shut it down. He tells him this was always the future. The 5/9 attacks, they just accelerated. And Jack asks him how long he has been pressing this pedal and plotting against him, and Price says that they've known each other for years. He knows full well he doesn't give a shit about him and tells him not to hold a personal grudge just because he lost, and tells him defeats can still be profitable. So again, I mean, Price isn't necessarily the man in control, but in his mind he is, and I just found that very fascinating. Like I said, I think it really added to this scene, and it's a great reveal that we've had, and now that we know that reveal, every single Price is going to make a lot more sense, knowing that whenever he tries to appease someone, he's not just appeasing them to help them, he's doing it so he can be the one in charge, because that's what he needs to feel, you know, wanted and earned. And if he doesn't feel that, then he's kind of just another lost cause, and he wants to be anything more than. I think, like I said, knowing that reveal last week, I think really added to this. And of course, I mean, Michael Christopher absolutely dominating this scene. I can't wait to see where the storyline is going. So Angela's then asks many more questions, and like I said, she's probably dodging a bunch of them. But then we eventually come to the big question, and that is the key in the room? And Angela, of course, doesn't know what the hell that means. Just like, I don't know what the hell is happening here. Her younger self then gets a call and hands it to Angela, and the caller says she's standing in the dark room, can't see anything, there's a torch and a match, and what should she do? And Angela says she would light the torch, and the caller says the torch lights the dark room with light, and she can see a door in front of her. Then what does she do? And Angela says she opens the door, turns the knob, it doesn't open. Angela says she doesn't know how she would. She eventually realizes the answer is with a key. She unlocks it with a key, and then asks what happens now. The girl then asks for the phone back, asks her the question again, and Angela says that the key was in her fist, which was in her pocket, and the girl prints out all of her answers and says that she will be back with her results. So she waits for the girl to come back. Again, I don't really know what this is trying to say, if it's trying to say that there's a way for Angela to get at this that she doesn't really see. But either way, this was just very interesting. And it doesn't end here, but then we go back to Dom, who comes home, takes a shower, cleaning the blood off of her. Very well done scene, may I add, because just seeing this scene just reveals a lot about her. She had these tattoos in her arms, and I don't think we knew that before, but she closed the curtains, gets into bed, puts on her glasses, and we're reminded how alone Dom really feels. I mean, the only time she feels somewhat alive is when she's at that police station, and she tells Alexa to wake her up, asks her if they're friends. The device says that they are. Dom says that they live together. She feels like she doesn't even know her, and she asks the device what's her favorite color is, and the device says infrared. She asks Alexa if she has a boyfriend, and the device says she's not the dating kind. Dom says that she's the same. Then asks for the color of its eyes. Alexa says it doesn't have them, and Dom says that hers are gray. She then asks the device if it's happy, and it says it's happy when it's helping her. And we're reminded, of course, that, I mean, Alexa isn't really a person, but it's really the only somewhat present type figure in Dom's life, and it's the only time she feels like she has someone. Even realizing that Dom, Alexa isn't capable of love, that's just something that really hurts Dom, and she tells Alexa goodnight, and it kind of gives me this feeling that I think Dom's starting to feel that maybe they are kind of hopeless, and that maybe this isn't really going to work out for her, and we're also, like I said, reminded that this is her only friend, which is very sad to see, but she tells Alexa goodnight, and that's how that all goes. And I thought, like I said, very well done scene there. I really have loved these scenes with Dom. I hope we get more of them next season, because I really don't want Dom to die. I've liked what they've done with her character, and I want to see more of her. So I really hope we get more of that next season, because those have been definitely some of the highlights when it comes to Dom's character. I like this side a lot more than the lollipop, know-it-all side of Dom that she clearly seems to have. Although, to me, that seems more like that's the, Dom feels that way because, like I said, it's the only time she feels someone alive and that she's somewhat right. Other times she kind of just feels like, someone who has no friends, because she really doesn't. So Angela hears her younger self come back with the results, but somehow she's now Whiterose, we see. And Angela asks who she is and if this is her house, and says she's been there for hours. Whiterose says she wanted to confirm that this wasn't a waste of her time. Angela asks about hers, and Whiterose says hers is much more valuable than hers. First of all, by the way, why didn't Whiterose present herself as Zhang? I don't really know, because it seems like Zhang is always who Whiterose, it's like the mask that Whiterose has, but as we know from Elliot, the mask has kind of been taken off, so maybe that's why, and I think we know the Whiterose is her true personality, but she says she's only allotted 28 minutes for this conversation, should they say this should begin, and Angela asks to leave. Whiterose says she's waited so long and must want to know why that is, if she believes her time holds any value. She says she's been close to 4 rooms, and she never thought to walk out the door, and Angela says the door was locked, and Whiterose says that she always found doors fascinating inventions. They hold the entry to unlimited imagination, and before she opens any door, a world filled with possibilities sits right at its end. It isn't until she opens it that they are realized. Such potential they bring to our minds, and yet a lock stopped her from all of that, which she just finds kind of lazy. And Angela says that her fish had died, and Whiterose says that she knows. Angela says she's a terrible person, she hurts that little girl, and we realize that that was just a test, really, to see if she actually cared about that girl. And Whiterose says that she knows she has sensitive information, doesn't want to release it, and says normally her associates would have murdered her by now. In fact, by her calculations, she should have been dead 90 days ago, apparently. And honestly, this really does make sense. Like I've said all season, Angela's days are numbered, and I don't really know if she's getting out of the season alive. It just doesn't really seem like that's going to happen, but somehow she stuck around long past that, and Angela asks who she is. Whiterose says that she's a woman of her time and doesn't believe in accidents, and she keeps turning up everywhere she looks, and that is why she wanted to finally meet her, so that she could find out why she's so special to Price, because obviously Price considered her his protege, and she doesn't really understand what it is, and, because she feels that he's ruining their partnership, and somehow it seems that she's the motivation, and it's true they have an event and a friend in common, but she hasn't been fully able to understand what the meaning behind all of it is, and Angela asks what event she's talking about, and Whiterose says it's not really a coincidence that she and Ellie became who they are after what happened to the Washington Township plant so many years ago. And Angela asks what that has to do with Elliot, and asks if she knows him. And Whiterose says if she tells her that her mother and Edward died for a reason, would that make a difference? And says that they were a trade for a sacrifice to the greater good that gave their lives take humanity to the next level, and they are both who they are today because of that event, and that she'd be a completely different person today, and certainly wouldn't be sitting in front of her. Now, this is all interesting what happens here. She goes on about how she's going to give her the flash drive and she needs to let her go, because Angela really just wants to get out of there. She doesn't really know what's going on, and I like the way the Whiterose compares her to this Penny, that she just, ended up anywhere. She just kept appearing, and she didn't really know what to do with her. So then we get into this whole idea, though, where Whiterose talks about how, she encourages her to keep trying, eventually find a way to shut down her project, and she tells her that she doesn't want her proof, she wants her belief. What does that mean? Honestly, I have no idea what they're talking about here. This part is completely stumping me, and I don't know what Whiterose is really trying to get at. And Angela obviously is just confused, but Whiterose asks if she ever thought that if she believed or imagined in something that it could become true simply by will, and Angela says she did, but she's slowly having to admit it's just not the real world, even if she wanted to be. And Whiterose says she gets it, it all depends on what her whole definition of real is, and it's just a very bizarre scene. I don't really know what she's talking about. What fantasy world has Angela been living in? I think it's that Angela wants to feel that she's more powerful than she is, and that I think Whiterose wants to feel that way as well. But Whiterose is the ever-powerful figure. I mean, Whiterose is probably the most powerful out of all of them right now. So why does Whiterose want this belief? I don't really understand where we're getting at with that, and I don't really know if I like it either, but overall very interesting, and I definitely really did like that. The last, I'd say, 10 minutes of this episode were so confusing. I have no idea what's going on. We see Elliot continues the mantra. He wakes up, asks us how long he's been asleep for. Mr. Robot has suddenly returned. We see going through articles, and it seems that these two are kind of divided right now. They're not at all in control of each other. They're not at all the same person. They're turning into two very different people, which, like I said, I kind of pictured happening, but he doesn't seem to respond to him, we see. Elliot wonders if it's worked and says he's now the silent observer like him and like us. He sees the flyers for a barbecue, says this is why he's now come home. Someone is trying to make contact with him. Mr. Robot says each number represents a letter. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and it's weird because Mr. Robot starts narrating just like Elliot would, and Elliot tells him to cut down the woods, remove all the parent numbers, and Elliot then realizes it's a phone number, but he doesn't know who it's to, and Mr. Robot calls an unknown number. Elliot's unsure of who it is. Mr. Robot then leaves the house, and they then walk through a festival where everyone wants Con Ed bills, and we see a news report of prices alone, which is very interesting to see. So again, I don't really know what's going on with the whole Elliot Mr. Robot thing. It seems like these two are kind of going on their own. They're kind of turning into two different people, which is interesting to see. So Anatara's been watching it. She hears a knock at the door from Angela, who asks what happened to her and says she thought they were going to meet. This scene I was kind of pissed off by because it seemed like we were getting somewhere, and it's just like every other scene we got with Anatara. Angela tells her to leave her alone. She wants nothing to do with her. Why is she still here? I don't really understand what they're trying to get at here, but again, I feel like it's kind of the point. But this was just kind of pissing me off. The fact that we got pretty much the exact same scene we've gotten all season with Angela and Anatara, it's just very repetitive at this point, and I want to see what's going on here. I don't really know what's happening, but Elliot's walking down the street. He asks us where Mr. Robot went, says he has to remember he's not following him. He is him, but what he should be asking is where is he going? He then gets into a cab, and let me just say, this final scene was perfection. I loved everything about this. He asks where the driver somehow knows his name, asks for the dress. Elliot asks what he means. The driver keeps speaking Swedish, and he's asking for his name, and we don't know why. And then, out of nowhere, exactly what I thought was going to happen all season does happen when Elliot sees Tyrell. And he gets in the cab, and he asks for his address, called Chambers and Church. Tyrell tells him they have to be careful now, and Elliot tells this is no longer a question of what he's seeing. The real question is what he's not seeing, because he now knows that Mr. Robot absolutely lied to him, and that he at first doesn't know if he's seeing Tyrell. Tyrell says he has to understand that both of them meeting right now is dangerous, and he says to not worry, their partners have become very influential, and Elliot asks him if he sees a driver sitting next to him. Tyrell asks what he's doing. Elliot tells the driver to turn around. Tyrell says he has to calm down. They're both taken out of the cab. Tyrell asks him what the meaning of all that was and says he knows he's been under a lot of stress, but so is he. He can't even imagine what it's like for him, and he tells him they can't talk out there. They're exposed, and tells him they're too close. Elliot asks close to what, and Tyrell asks if he's forgotten everything. He says the Dark Army is holding that Stage 2 is ready, and when he sees it, he'll be pleased. So clearly these two have been working on Stage 2 for a while. He says it worked. It's up to them now. Tells him to let him show him, and they both walk away. Tyrell then quotes the ending of Casablanca, and that's how the episode ends, and I am as confused as ever, but let's just get right into it. Like I said, for me, this is really, like I said, a smaller part of a larger whole, and it just didn't really feel like a complete episode. I don't really know why they did it this way. I would have just done both episodes and then combined them as one. Again, I'm not the runner of USA. I don't control this works, but it just doesn't really make sense to me why they did this way, because the episode as a whole just felt very incomplete, very confused. Tyrell and Elliot, though, I love this. I love that Tyrell is alive because it tells Elliot a few things. One, he's not crazy. He did, in fact, hear Tyrell on that phone. And two, that Mr. Robot was, in fact, keeping something from him, and there's something that he doesn't want him to know. That's why he's been so distant. That's why Mr. Robot wants nothing to do with Elliot right now, because he doesn't want him to know the truth, what happened with Tyrell. But it seems like next week everything's going to come out. We're going to find out what's happening here. What's going on with Angela? Why does Whiterose want her so-called belief? What belief systems does Angela have that Whiterose envies? That's something I'm definitely interested in getting to. Dom, I like seeing Dom all alone, not really having anyone. It's sad to see, but it kind of is showing, like I said, that she's kind of losing hope, and I think it's interesting to see where that's going to go. As far as Anatara, why did Angela just reject Anatara? We don't really know. And what are her and Whiterose plans? Obviously, it looks like she is going to give in to Whiterose, but we'll have to see what happens with that, because that's going to be interesting as well. And also, what does she mean by Edward and Angela's mother were supposed to die? We don't really know what that means, and that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. And I guess the only other question is Price. What is Price going to do with this money? You know, is it really going to work out? I mean, he seems to think, like I said, that he's in power, when in reality he's really not, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that. And then finally, Darlene and Cisco. What's happened to them? I think Cisco's dead, Darlene's alive. That's what I'm thinking, at least. We didn't see Darlene, but she is in the plot description for next week, so we'll have to see where that goes. Overall, guys, just a really confusing, incomplete episode. Kind of hard to review as one episode, just because of the fact that, again, it's a smaller part of a larger episode, and I don't really know why they did it this way. To me, it would have made a lot more sense to put it into one episode rather than split into two parts, but we'll have to see what happens with that. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Love to hear your thoughts on it, and that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next one, which will be for the series premiere of the new Amazon show, Fleabag, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.